From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson. Usually you see me here with my dear friend Hector Bosa. Hector, unfortunately, has been battling a ton of health issues lately. It's 50-50 whether he's going to be able to call into the show or not. So as of right now, we're awaiting his call from now until the very end. And we also want to say welcome back after basically 2 weeks away. We were on hiatus for Martin Luther King Day, but we are back live and in living color, not only here on Fios and through Spectrum, but also through YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. So if you want to tell your story about anything and everything that's going on in the world of sports, specifically Staten Island sports, we would love to know about it, and you can contact us through those mediums, and we'll be able to tell your story. Speaking of telling stories, we have a very special guest at this time right now, and he has been practically telling his story through the World Wide Web. Meet Dan. Not only does he have a major interest in sports as well, he also has his own show. It's called the Nobody Cares Talk Show. And he was kind enough to take time out of a busy schedule to join us, and he joins us live right now. It's really great to see you and really great meeting you as well. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Jaime, that was a hell of an introduction. I really appreciate you having me on your broadcast. You know, all the good folks down at Nobody Cares Sports Show, thanks you for bringing us in.
Well, we definitely care about having you here on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm a little curious as to how you got the name for your show.
Sure. Well, Jaime, it's not to say that nobody cares, right? We obviously understand that when you're dealing with sports, it's a very passionate fan base, and of course, it's usually family members involved. With all the different sports that you have on Staten Island, we realize that people care. But it's just that people don't care about us, and we realize that, right? So it's just to say, with all of the absolute infinite possibilities that you have to entertain yourself with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and podcast and TV and Hulu and God knows what else, nobody cares about a sports show covering New York sports out of MakerParkRadio.nyc, but we do it because we love it, and the people that we bring on, they have a real story to tell. They do, and we allow ourselves to be the platform for them.
Of all the times that you've been doing the show, has there ever been a point or a moment where things got really, really out of hand during a live broadcast?
Boy, I tell you, when you have a sports show called Nobody Cares, things can get out of control really fast. So we have a cast of characters down there at the station, and we have some people that come on the show regularly, and one of those people is somebody that's affectionately called the Commodore. The Commodore is the Commodore of a shipless, landlocked yacht club, all right? Now, this yacht club isn't on the water, and all of the members don't own any boats, if you can fathom that in your mind for a second. Now, there's a guy, right, he's in control of the whole thing. He's the Commodore, as a yacht club would have. Now, if you're going to be the Commodore of a landlocked, shipless ocean yacht club, that sounds like the perfect character to have on Nobody Cares Sports Show. And behoove it from me, the guy knows a hell of a lot about local sports. He's passionate about it. He comes on and he does local segments. He does a segment every week where he does the state of local sports. It's called the Commodore's Report. And he comes on the show, and then we have our guests that come on every week, and they might be coaches or they might be former players. And then you've got the producer, and you've got all our tech guys and sideline reporters there. So it's a wide variety of characters and personalities. And our green room is a lot of fun. Everybody's green room is different, right? Your green room is back there. It's really professional down here at CCTV, and you know what time it is when you come in. When you walk into the Nobody Cares green room, it's like, holy Hannah, there's a party going on down here. I don't even know if these guys are aware there's a sports show. So I'm over in the booth trying to do my thing and deliver sports reports. And just through the glass on the other side, people are listening to the show, but they're having a good time. So then you have to pull people from the green room and put them on live and try and corral them into a professional environment. And you have an easier chance of, lassoing a bull in the arena.
Why do I get the feeling that this sounds like a cross between ESPN and Animal House?
I think ESPN is too high up of a reference on that other end of the spectrum, right? It's kind of like a cross between CCTV and Animal House, right?
Oh,
Maybe that's
wow.
it. But we do take ourselves seriously, but nobody cares, Jamie. You got to understand, nobody cares.
Oh, well. What is the location for your show?
The location for our show, well, we broadcast on the beautiful North Shore of Staten Island in the very luxurious Stapleton neighborhood. Not sure if you've ever heard of it.
I know Stapleton very well.
Gorgeous.
I grew up not too
Gorgeous.
far from Stapleton for almost 30 years.
Christ alive. Beautiful town. Mm-hmm. Wonderful people. You talk about a cast of characters. Stapleton's got it, boy. They really do. But we broadcast down there out of a lovely space. It's called Maker Park Radio, right? They're the radio station that we broadcast with. Great group of people. Tom Ferry, Kristen Wallace, and they have like 80 DJs
Wow.
that do everything that you could possibly, every genre you could possibly imagine, from like Sri Lankan music to classic rock and everything in between. And then there's Nobody Cares Sports Show. So we don't really know how we're fitting in down there, but we love them, and it's it's a not-for-profit radio station. So if you want to listen in live, you go to makerparkradio.nyc like right now, and you can see who's playing right now live. But we stream the site through our own website, nobodycaresportshow.com. So it's a great group of people, and if there was more community radio stations out there like them, believe me, the world would be a better place, man.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, are the facilities Maker Space off of Bay Street?
Boy, I tell you, this sure could get confusing to the listeners at home. Yes, and no. So it is within the same building as Makerspace, but they're a separate entity. They have nothing to do with Makerspace at all. They just kind of share the same space. So it's a similar name, right? But they're separate entities.
I've been inside Makerspace. They've got something really fascinating going on in their facility. And right around the corner is 50/50, which has a whole bunch of different events going on. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Kenny, who's on the other side of the glass, by the way, shout out to Kenny for joining us on the other side of the glass.
Best dressed guy I've ever seen on the other side of the glass. He's crushing it over there.
Just cracked a smile for the first time in forever.
You don't want to make him mad.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Hector's on the other line. Is that right? Well, he was on the other line. I think he might have fallen asleep again.
Same thing happens at Nobody Cares Sports Show. You think you have somebody on the line, and they're like, oh, we got him. And then, boom, he's gone.
All right. We're going to try again to see if we can have Hector back on the show. Hector's my co-host, who I've had on and off for about, I would say, 7 or 8 years. Really good dude. Unfortunately, he's going through some really tough times with his health recently. But one thing that I know about him is that he's always trucking along, and he never makes excuses for himself or for anybody else. So we're going to see if we can try and bring him back. Tell me about the idea of Nobody Cares Sports Show. Where were you when the idea came up, and why did you decide to make it happen?
Well, the idea for the actual sports broadcast came from my good friend, and he's the executive producer on the show, and that's Freddie Mangin. And Fred came up with the idea. He said, I want to do a sports show that derives around local sports, and I think you're, perfect guy for the job. He's like, what do you think about it? And I said, well, I've been a comedian for 12 years. I don't know if I could put my name on a sports show and have it be serious. And he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to call it Nobody Cares. And he really wasn't about it at first. He was like, I don't know, man. I think that's a bad idea. And I was like, listen, I hear you. But even if you call yourself #1 sports show, Nobody Cares, Freddie. I'm like, just say what it is. Call it like it is. He was like, sure. Nobody cares. Then how are we going to get people on the show? I'm like, I don't know. I think that if we just do the right thing by the community, that people will come out, participate, and show love. Thankfully, that's exactly what took place. You know? But it could have spiraled out of control quickly, you know.
Have you kept track of how many listeners you have on a given day?
Well, we only broadcast right now 2 days a week. All right, so that is the first and third Saturday of every month.
Mm-hmm. And I think we just got word
let's
from Kenny
bring him
that Hector is on after all. Are you there, Hector?
Yes, I am.
Good, good. By the way, before you start, say hello to my guest who's in the studio. His name is Dan. He actually has his own sports show.
Hector,
Oh, wow.
did you fall over, buddy?
Hello, Dan.
Hector, it's a
How are
pleasure
you?
to meet you. Pleasure. Very good. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. It's all mine. That's why I didn't come in today, because I knew you wanted to sit in.
This is a beautiful chair you've got here, man. I'm taking good care of it while you're gone.
Yes. Keep it warm, because it's too damn cold outside.
You don't have like an eject button at home, do you? When you're tired of listening to me, you press a button and I just Inspector Gadget out of this thing?
No. I try to use that for Jamie.
Oh.
We start talking about the Knicks.
Is that what
You're an
that's,
idiot.
That's that spring on the receipt. I saw that. I was
Oh,
wondering what that
that's
was
terrible.
for.
You know, the other side, I have drinks on the side, because I need it when I speak to Jamie.
No, you
About
use
the-
those drinks just for the hell of it because you're a habitual drunk.
Habitual. You a habitual line
it's
stepper.
better to be a habitual drunk than to be a habitual Jamie.
Wow.
Better to be a habitual me
Shots
than a
fired.
habitual drunk.
Yes. This is the way to show the guest how you treat your co-host. Very well, Jamie. Very good.
Shots
Would
fired.
you like a co-host on your show? I would gladly come over there for 2 cents.
2 cents.
Yeah.
You guys got. I don't know if I could afford it. Down there, nobody cares. We got a negative budget. You know.
Yeah.
Let me ask, Jamie was the average show, and you don't keep track, but what made you get started?
What made us get started with the whole broadcast thing? Yeah, you know, I felt that there was. I do a lot of. Hate saying that.
Yeah.
I do a lot of community outreach work with my show productions outside of Nobody Cares Sports Show. You know, we do a Toys for Tots drive every year at Flagship Brewery, where we then dress
really
up like
cool.
Santa and deliver the toys ourselves. So we always make sure whatever we're doing good for the community and, you know, spreading positive vibes and love. But when it comes to sports on Staten Island, it is as big here as it is anywhere in the United States. No question when it comes to the passion and the culture behind something like high school sports, right? And I feel that it's been better represented through social media. And you see that when you go to games, whether it's football or basketball, these games are sold out. And it's like, wow, this is amazing, but there's no coverage. Like, what the hell's going on here? So I just figured if we created a show and the main driving force behind it was shining a light on these kids and the great things that they're doing for the communities, the coaches that are, you know, devoting their entire life with no free time, you know, giving it to their family and these kids in the programs, to shine a light on it. And I think that in the last years, 20 years ago, it was all over, you know, with Staten Island cable. Of course, there was always good coverage every year with the sports. But things changed, the rights changed, the copyrights, who can do what with what. And I think we've just kind of found a nice little niche market where we're able to go live on social media. We're able to interview coaches without infringing on anybody else's intellectual property. And what we're finding is that there's a lot of love in the community for that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're able to talk about professional sports But mainly we're talking about local sports because I think that's what people want to hear. In other words, within our own audience. You know, you could talk Knicks and Rangers and stuff like that all day, but you have to dig a lot deeper to talk St. Peter's basketball all day. So,
yeah.
I hear you, because there's a lot of people in that facility and his former co-host. Not too many people like talking about Staten Island sports, especially at CTV.
Yeah.
But I wanted to tell you that that's a good thing that you're doing because Staten Island needs a little bit of a morale boost, I think, and I feel. And also,
good point.
Who is the hottest players right now coming out of Staten Island, in your opinion?
Well, I think that when you look at the crop of athletes that Staten Island has put out, not only recently, but over the course of, say, the last decade, you know, they have really put out some highly touted athletes that have gone on to play outside of New York City. And, you know, we try and tap into that on our broadcast and sometimes bring in athletes that went on to bigger and better things, and then they come home and they tell their story. But, you know, when you look at this year, so high school basketball is in season. You've got a kid for Curtis who's got probably the easiest name to pronounce in all of sports. He's an African kid. His name is Adelaide Oyekanmi.
Yep.
And my God.
Oh, that's simple.
Simple. Oh, it's just like Tom Ryan. Super simple.
Exactly.
And
Rolls off
the tongue, just like PB&J. But
exactly.
he's an absolute beast. Like he's a 1,000-point scorer for Curtis High School, which isn't an easy thing to do. You got to be a 3 or 4 year varsity player to achieve that. And he's just like one of those players where it's all eyes on him, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's other playmakers on that team, but he would be somebody to look out for. And then over in the Catholic school end of it, you know, St. Peter's boys, they got a couple of really good kids that play forward for them. I think it's Liam Murphy and Jack Clancy. Now these are two Irish kids that just dominate the boards. You know, they could easily go on and play D1 ball because of their size alone. I think the bigger one is like 6'7".
It's not bad.
You know, 6'7", and you could shoot and learn how to play defense. So there's some kids out there now that can certainly make the jump, but there's been kids in all sports out here from this island that have really made, you know, home proud of them.
Yeah.
There's kids in Dom Easley. You know, he played for the Patriots. Now he's on the Rams. The Rams are in the Super Bowl this week. Mm-hmm. He's injured.
Yeah.
But that would be another player that, you know, made that jump.
And most recently after that is Ahmad Anderson, who graduated from Curtis and now is at Purdue.
Beast. He was on the team last year as a freshman, didn't get a lot of burn, but now he's going to be a sophomore this year. And Purdue's one of those programs that's on the rise, and that's another Curtis product. Curtis turns out a lot of football players.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there were athletes from their last team that have gone on, not to any big splashy schools, but in my opinion, when you go on and you're able to play sports in college and get a free education, that's all the splash that you need. You know, and we've got a lot of kids doing that.
The other one I wanted to add was, how about in baseball? Anybody coming up?
You know, baseball for me, I'll be honest with you, with Nobody Cares Sports Show, it's a little bit outside my realm right now because it's not in season. And my wealth of knowledge comes directly from the coaches. Mm-hmm. You know, so when I sit down and I ask them who's good, it's who they think is good and who they're worried about this year outside of their own team, you know. So I haven't had much of an opportunity to really dig into the baseball out here. Mm-hmm. But that is as competitive as any other sport. There are kids that are 16-year-olds old throwing gas.
Yeah.
Like 90 miles per hour. That's unheard of.
I always wonder how kids that young are able to throw close to 100 miles an hour and still keep their arms intact. Because there are pitchers that are 10 to 15 years older, they're already getting TJ surgery.
But that's good. They teach them the curve way too young. The curve is what throws out the arm. You can throw. God bless you. Hector will tell you. You can throw a 100-mile-per-hour fastball for as long as you want. The second that you try and throw a curveball is when you adjust your form and you manipulate your arm and the torque of your wrist to throw the ball differently in the way you hold it, and that's when you start to see a lot of injuries in younger kids that aren't fully matured with their bodies, and you get these Tommy John surgery way too early in their career. But
and the way you hold your fingers on the ball too.
Right. Yeah, the way you're holding your fingers on the ball,
Yeah.
absolutely. And what happens to these kids? You don't need to teach a kid that's throwing 90 in high school how to throw a curve. They're not going to touch him.
I mean, it would make for a good out pitch because no pitcher wants to be looked at as one-dimensional.
Sure.
They need to have that secondary pitch in order to lengthen their careers. I mean, if it's not necessarily a curveball, how about a split-finger fastball? How about a changeup or a slider?
It's not just the high school level. I'm sure Hector could even tell you. You watch the Little League World Series. They're showing kids how to throw curveballs, and they're in like 9th grade, 8th grade.
Wow.
Yeah, they are. That's true. The only problem that I'm seeing is how is it that the people, let's say Nolan Ryan and them guys, can throw all those things, not get really hurt, and now the pitchers of this era start getting Tommy John surgery like mad, like crazy at a young age. What is it about the era of 70s, 60s, and maybe even 80s till now? What happened? Is it the milk? Is it the food?
It's probably the milk.
You're supposed to have better exercise equipment.
Blame everything on the milk. Yeah.
Exactly.
That is a peculiar question, simply because if the game were still the same, it would make sense that the injuries were on the rise. But today, you don't see a Nolan Ryan. You don't see somebody that goes out there and throws 9 innings consistently. They put starting pitchers in and they take them out after 5.5 innings because they say that they're done, and they give them a 90-pitch limit, and they say that they're done. So if you still had kids out there that were doing the Nolan Ryan thing and they were pitching game after game, and they needed injuries or they had injuries, it would make sense. But they're babying these athletes and they're still getting injured. So it makes you question whether there's an X factor involved, whether it is a diet or a workout regimen, whatever it is. I mean, I gotta blame the milk. I'd be honest with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the chicken, the hormones in the chicken.
I believe in the breast at the way. I'm going to say that part. But,
something in the water.
Exactly.
Definitely.
But the point I'm trying to make is, and me and Jimmy always had this conversation about which type of sport does Staten Island dominate when it comes to the kids going from high school or college to the pros. For instance, I think football is the main dominant on Staten Island, and a lot of people make it.
Football first and maybe baseball a close second.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's what I try and gauge it as when Staten Island teams go off of Staten Island and compete against other teams from the other 4 boroughs, right? So I try and base it on that history. And if you look at the high school level, which is what you're associating with, where do kids go on to play college, right? So at the high school level, there is a strong history of Staten Island basketball teams going to play Brooklyn teams and Bronx teams and getting worked, right? And just getting ran out of the gym. That has changed in the last couple of years to where even you saw, Curtis was in the semifinals last year, and there's never been a Staten Island team to win a city basketball championship, right?
Well,
so you have to
in the
say
Catholic
that's
leagues,
out.
we had St. Peter's.
In the Catholic League, you had St. Peter's.
And Curtis did win a few years ago. I think it was 2014, if I'm not mistaken, or 2010.
Yeah, St. Peter's been dominant. I would say I would agree with your co-host, though. Football is probably that one sport where Staten Island could play against the other schools out there and not only hold their own but dominate at times. And it's not the same programs out here. And then if you look back, Wagner High School in the 90s with Al Paterzo, they were at one point a top 10 school in the nation. You know, I remember they played at Curtis in 1994. There was like 5,000 people at the game, like probably the most people that were ever at a high school game in Staten Island history. And it was because Wagner was that good. And you could look at their roster. I'm sure that there were kids that made the jump, and people are still talking about kids from those teams. So football, I would say, is probably the number one sport where the kids make the jump to in terms of Staten Island sports. But baseball could be that X factor second, because the schools out here, you know, like a Tottenville High School, like a premier baseball school, those kids go out and kick ass against the other boroughs, man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, I mean, in your opinion, has there been a lot of pros coming out of Staten Island, and in which so? I think in football, again, there's been a lot more pros from football.
I think it's football as well, but the thing is, you know, you could have kids that play baseball in Staten Island and they make that jump to the minor leagues, but they're in the minor league system for 5 or 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
So they made that jump, but they're not getting that splash that I talked about earlier, right? So with the football kids, you know, you're probably just going to go to a D1 school, get a lot of exposure, and if you're good enough, move on to the pros. And I think that you have seen that most from the football athletes on Staten Island. Yeah.
And there have been plenty of Staten Islanders who've gone to the NFL. Steve Gregory and Dominic Easley, both out of Curtis. Mike Ciani, who, if I'm not mistaken, went to Newdorp. He played for the Raiders. Vernon Turner, another Curtis kid.
Crush.
Yep. Wound up playing in the Super Bowl with the Buffalo Bills against the Giants all those years
Mike
ago.
Andruzzi, right? Patriots.
Joe Andruzzi of the
Joe
Patriots,
Andruzzi.
who was a Wagner kid. And he wound up being very famous for two things. One, beating cancer, and two, having two brothers survive the terrorist attacks
Crazy.
on 9/11. So to answer your question, yes, there have been plenty of Staten Island football stars that have made it to the NFL.
Definitely more so than, you know, kids that made it to the NBA, right? You really don't hear that too often from Staten Island athletes.
The closest that we had to a Staten Island kid making it to the NBA was Ronaldo Balkman, although he was born here but raised in South Carolina.
Hardly anybody wants to admit that they're from Staten Island for some reason.
Except if you're
I've
on
noticed
MTV.
that.
If you're on MTV, you scream that you're from Staten Island for some reason.
Yeah, exactly. Once in a blue moon. You know,
I'm
we'll
proud
get
to
here.
say it, to be honest with you, that I'm from Staten Island.
Yes, if you're such a great athlete, yes. Yeah, but we're talking about people that made it to the pros, because I've noticed that they'll go, oh, he's from New York. No, you're from Staten Island, New York. I'm sorry. Mention Staten Island so we can get a little bit of a boost here.
You know,
Because
we failed to mention the one hockey star who made it big in the NHL many years ago.
Yes.
Nick Fatiu.
His grandmother used to live upstairs from me.
Did she?
Yes, she did.
That's Staten Island for you.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Nick Fatiu,
So,
although Nick Fatiu's story was really, really amazing, because when he was a teenager, he would take the train all the way to Long Island just to skate in the rinks out there, because Long Island had the only really good skating rink for young hockey players to play. And that's how he fine-tuned his game. And he wound up starring for the Rangers for many years. And he had a long and solid career in the NHL. I think he lasted about 16 years in the game.
Beast of a human being, by the way, right? Absolute, like, enforcer.
And
Big dude.
Ranger fans loved
Yeah,
him for
yeah.
his enforcer mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you mentioned
that's the best
basketball.
way.
The big thing among basketball fans here is the Staten Island High School League tournament. That always takes major attention from Staten Island basketball fans. It's going to be coming up pretty soon. Who would you say is the team to beat here on the island?
Well, I think when it comes to the team to beat, you always got to go with who are the champions, right? So, and then you look at who's the champions the year before that, and it's the same answer. So I think that this year it would be St. Peter's Eagles, the St. Peter's Boys High School. They're the champions the last couple of years. The team that won it before them was Curtis. So it seems like those two schools are always in the running. It's kind of like the championship game that always seems to happen. But they do that purposely, where they set up the divisions for the Staten Island basketball playoffs, where St. Peter's is actually in the South Division, even though St. Peter's is in New Brighton on the North Shore. And they put Curtis, which is in St. George, in the North Division. They do this because they realize that those are the two probable best schools to run the table, right? And if there's going to be a championship game, who would be a bigger draw than that? So right now, with the way that the Staten Island standings are set up, Curtis is atop their division, and then on the other end, St. Peter's is atop their division. So they're shaking out to be the two strong teams. But they're saying, from all the coaches that we've had on Nobody Cares Sports Show, they say that it's wide open, that this year is the year where you could expect to see parity, right? Which is something the NFL swears that they have, but the Patriots are in the Super Bowl again. What do I know?
Yeah, go figure.
But they're saying that this year would be the year where there would be a lot of parity. And I have some, some of the numbers. I mean, Monsignor Farrell is 6-2, so they're a game behind Curtis, but they have a solid team. They beat St. Peter's this year. They actually split with them. Port Richmond is at 5-3. McKee Staten Island Tech. I grew up thinking McKee Staten Island Tech was horrible, and they were for years and everything. You could just put a trash can on the field, and that was McKee. But now they got a hell of a coach in Charlie Donahue, and he played at Curtis High School with Coach Archibald, who's the coach of the Curtis Warriors now.
Yep.
And
know Dwayne very well.
Charlie's down there, and he put together a hell of a program at McKee where, not only are they competing, but to be 6-3 at this point in the season, don't be surprised if a team like them or even Newdorp, I trash Newdorp so much on my show because our executive producer, Fred Mangin, is alumni of Newdorp. And I just make sure and put them down as much as possible. What we try and do is bring at least one Newdorp alum onto the show to defend the case, right? So we give them an opportunity. But with all that I have outspoken in negative vibes towards Newdorp, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a run just to rub it in our face at this point. So you heard it here. Newdorp could make a run, but, I think it'll be Curtis Peters again. And apparently Peters, they might have suffered a big injury to one of their two star players I was talking about with Clancy and Murphy. I heard a rumor that Murphy may have hurt his knee and may be out for the remainder of the season.
Uh-oh.
So if that's the case, you hate to hear stuff like that, but if that's the case, it opens it up even more to the other teams that there could be an upset out there.
Oh. And as we know in high school sports, there's no such thing as a red shirt.
Oh.
If they miss the rest of the season, then they got to either come back the following year, or if they're a senior, they're done.
Done. Yeah, absolutely. That's it. You never want to see a kid get hurt. You always want to see him stay healthy, especially through the playoffs. You wish him success. You hope he comes back. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was Curtis Peters again. But like I said, you never know, man. Crazier things have happened.
They say that the Staten Island High School League championship is bigger than the PSAL championship. Why?
I don't know about that, man. I think that, first of all, the Staten Island High School League championship is played at the College of Staten Island. PSAL championship is played at Madison Square Garden.
Well, actually, for years it was played at the Garden. Now it's being played at the Barclays Center.
Now it's at the Barclays.
Mm-hmm.
Even more state-of-the-art arena. But yeah, that's the difference. Yet at the same time, it's bragging rights for your hometown, for where you live, right, for where your family is. So there's a sense of tradition and a sense of pride, obviously, that goes into playing in that kind of a tournament. But that's not where the season ends. all those kids, they go on to keep playing it. If they win that tournament, then they're on to a city or a state. So that's not the end-all, be-all. And I think that when you're an athlete and a competitive athlete, that you strive to be the best. So I think in today's day and age, you would have to say that something like the city is a higher level. But maybe in years past, where Staten Island teams didn't have the talent to compete with the city, that it was big and it was as big as it was going to get. But now that the kids are getting better and playing with the kids in the other boroughs, I would say that they're striving to get to that next level. And it's kind of not downplaying it, but they've got an eye on a bigger prize.
Hector, do you have anything for us?
Yes, I do. I always have something for you.
Love it. This guy's awesome. Can't wait to meet you, buddy.
Yeah, don't worry, we'll meet.
Don't worry. Don't you worry. I'm not worried. I'm worried.
Don't worry. We will meet. We will greet.
Yes.
But I have to tell you, Jamie, I know everybody's been talking about that blown call.
Yeah. If anything, they've been
What do you
talking
think?
about it too much.
Exactly. There was somebody that actually tried to sue for mental stress.
Oh, brother. Was it a fan?
Yes.
Oh, for crying out loud. See,
He tried to
this
sue
is
for
where
three
fans
things.
really
But wait.
take things too far.
That's that guy's way of saying that he bet all of his money, all of his kids' tuition on the Saints to win. And that's not liable in court because he can't put his bookie's name down on the papers, right? So then
Yep.
he
No, I don't
claims
think
stress.
he's betting. I think it's just like everybody else, where you're so excited about your team going, and you see the obvious play, and they can't review it because it's not reviewable.
It's
And
funny
that's
that
one
you
of the things
mentioned
that
this
they're going to
because
have to do tomorrow. I mean, next season.
it's funny that he mentions this because they're talking about instituting a rule that would make pass interference a reviewable play. But what would happen if they did institute this rule? Shouldn't that be done for every other questionable penalty that gets called in a game? Not just pass interference, but how about hits to the head? There are so many hits to the head that go uncalled
Listen, bro.
or overlooked for that matter.
That was like the worst call ever.
Obviously.
Ever. Like there's just this video gamer did a thing where he played Madden NFL 2019, the new Madden game, right? And it did the exact same scenario where he did the Los Angeles Rams versus the New Orleans Saints in New Orleans, but he turned down on the settings, he turned down pass interference all the way to nothing so that they never call pass interference. He did the exact same thing, tackled the wide receiver before the ball got there, and what happens? The ref in the video game threw a flag where they turned down the setting all the way to say, no, you can't do that. I mean, there's 3-year-old kids at home that are saying it's a flag. And then you find out 4 of the refs are from Southern California. My God, what's happening?
Oh, brother.
It's crazy. I'm not a Saints fan, but if I was, I would be in a really bad place right now. I'm already in a bad place.
You would be suing like that guy.
Yeah, I'm already in a bad place, but I would be in a much worse place. I'm the host of Nobody Cares Sports Show, so.
No, somebody cares because some reason we care.
You guys
You
care.
care.
I'm happy that
You care.
he's blocking the Devils logo and I'm blocking the Islanders logo, so that makes me happy.
Well,
Well,
you know,
I have to tell you, you want to get your man next to you riled up?
I don't know. What does that mean?
Here's what you do. Jamie, the New York Knicks will be getting KD soon.
if you mean Kevin Durant, there's no chance in hell they're getting him.
Of course they will. All
No.
they got to do is just calm down a couple of people.
No.
Of course.
Kevin Durant wants to
Kevin
win a
Durant.
championship. He's not going to
Of
do
course.
that
Why
here.
not? Why wouldn't he go? They got the
Because he wants to win a championship.
Kevin Durant already won a
Of course he's gonna win
championship.
it.
He doesn't want to win a championship. He wants to
Exactly.
get money.
He doesn't want to win a championship.
He already
wants to be
won.
the man.
It's
He
over.
wants to be the man.
That's it.
He can be the man in Oakland.
Nobody
Or
can
if
be
he
the man
really
in
wants to be
Oakland.
the man, he could go back to Oklahoma City.
Have you ever been
Nobody
to?
wants it.
Both of those places are horrible.
His girlfriend is over here too, so why wouldn't he be near his girlfriend?
What part of the words he wants to win a championship do you not understand? He's
spoke-
already won 2 titles.
I spoke to Kevin Durant last week. He said he's coming to New York. You have nothing. to
He's
worry
not
about.
making his way
Thank
over
you,
here.
thank you,
It's
thank you.
not
Tell my man
happening.
next door there.
It's not
You see-
happening. Just like
You see how
Anthony
he gets
Davis
riled up
to the
when I
Knicks
talk
is
about
not
the
going to
Knicks?
happen. Just like Zion Williamson being drafted by the Knicks is not going to happen either.
Who's your favorite NBA team?
The Brooklyn Nets.
Can we? I know. Can we go to emergency or something? Can we pull this show right now? That's the worst answer I've ever heard in my life. He's over here yelling about Kevin Durant not coming to the Knicks with
Because
no
he's
basis
not
of
making his
fact
way
other than the
over
fact
here.
that he doesn't want
He
to hang
already
out in New
rejected
York.
them once.
Thank you very
What makes
much,
anybody
sir.
in their
Thank
right
you.
mind think he's
Thank
going to
you.
make his way over here?
These are all opinion. You're
This
perfect
is
for my
where-
show.
No
This is where-
superstar
this
with
is where
even
Jamie
one
bias
half of a
comes in.
brain will ever fathom wanting to play in this
Listen
city
to
unless
this.
they want to be
No
a Brooklyn Net.
superstar. Listen to that. No superstar will come to the New York Knicks.
Crazy.
Did LeBron make it over here?
This is
No.
supposed to be a
Did
bias.
Kevin
So
Durant
upset.
make it over here?
Crazy
No.
right now.
Did Steph Curry make it over here? No. Did Anthony Davis make it over here? No. And he's not going to make it over here the
Those
second time
guys were
either.
drafted by those teams.
Did
Did the Knicks
Kawhi
have a
Leonard
team?
make it over here? No. Did
Did the Knicks have a team like
Kyle
they do now?
Lowry make it over here? No.
Did the Knicks have a team like they do now? Not that they have the greatest right now, but did they have the core players that they need?
No.
Draft players.
If
Did they have the coach?
not
the
even
players?
close.
Exactly.
Sorry,
So,
but
what do you
David
think they have?
Fizdale is not the kind of guy that's going to lead them to the promised land.
The Nets haven't been good since
He's
the
a good
Croatian
he's a good
sensation.
assistant
Honest to
coach,
God.
but
This
he
is
had
horrible.
his
Would never make
chance
the
in
playoffs.
Memphis, and he wound up getting shortchanged.
This is tough.
Like
He's
I said,
not-
You understand?
he's not the
This
guy.
Is a man.
He is
isn't
not
easy.
the
This is a
guy.
man. I told you, all you have to do to rile this man up is talk about the Knicks.
I almost flipped the table over just now. I didn't even mean to. That's how palpable
No,
the
that's
energy
okay.
is.
I know, when you
But
talk
it's not
about
because of the
New York
Knicks. It's because we've got a faulty table.
No.
No, it's a faulty table. It is the faulty table. You know, I don't know where the money goes down there sometimes, but I tell you.
Here we go
Bro,
again.
the Nets haven't been good since Brendan Byrne Arena, and this guy screaming about Kevin Durant doesn't want to hang out here.
I'll have you know that they're in 6th place in the East.
I get it. There's a whole
And how they've
conference
been
out there
able to
called the
get
West.
this far, I have no idea how.
Nobody's going to win a
They
championship
also
while the
have
Warriors are
good core,
together.
Nice players, though. You
And
gotta
it's a
give credit.
it's a
They
good
do
thing that they
nice
have
players.
guys like Sean Marks as a GM
He said-
and Kenny Atkinson as a head coach.
He said, "What do you mean they're in 6th place right now?" I said, "They haven't been good since Brendan Byrne Arena." He goes, "They're in 6th place right now."
in the
Exactly.
Eastern Conference, not the
Just like I
division,
said.
the Eastern
Just like I
Conference.
told him. He told me that the Knicks would never make the playoffs.
And the way they're
it's
going
like
right now,
they
they're going to
did make the
continue to miss the playoffs.
So I get to hear about I get to
I hope
hear
the
how
Knicks
the
never win
treacherous
again.
Knicks will never do this and they'll never do that.
The
And
way
they'll
they're
never do-
being run
Let
right
me
now,
ask- let
how
me
are they
ask
going to
the-
do
let me ask
anything?
Let me ask your guest a question, please. You have seen the Knicks. Is this the first time you ever seen them this young before?
Have you ever seen this young of a roster?
I'm sorry, man. My phone's blowing up. People are like, they want to join in. You know, you guys are like, people are like, give me the number. I want to call. I'm like, oh God, is it the Commodores? yelling?
No.
Oh
You
no,
gotta
we
go
don't
back
want it.
yet.
We don't want this to spread. I gotta shout out the Mounties who haven't had a game in years. Staten Island touch tackle. They don't need to be shout out, but they
Yeah.
did.
No. Shout out whoever.
No. They don't get their
This is-
shout outs.
This is something that has been the bane of my existence because the Nets are doing pretty good. They finally got their core of kids with Dinwiddie, Russell, and some of them other guys.
Yeah, well, we better be careful who we're talking about here because they're missing guys because they're hurt. Spencer Dinwiddie's going to
again,
miss
even
time.
if they're hurt-
Karis LeVert is missing time as well. So we better temper our praise of these guys because, as we all know, it takes one major injury to change things.
All I'm saying is
Listen,
the Nets finally developed the core.
here's what's gonna
The
happen.
same way as the Knicks developed the core.
I agree with what's going to happen? The Knicks have some nice young talent now. What they're going to do is they're going to dump all their big contracts, right? They're going to get rid of Enes Kanter. They'll probably even get rid of Timmy Hardaway. They're going to absolutely gut it. They're going to have Porzingis come back. They'll look in bring in a big guy like Kevin Durant. And you know what? When you play in a city like New York, you get like $100 million just from Nike that's outside of your contract with whatever team, just because you're getting endorsements in a major market city. So that's one of the bigger draws for an athlete like a KD, even if it's not Kevin Durant. Even if it's a number 2 or number 3 free agent, whoever it is, Joe Schmo, he's going to be better than whatever the Knicks have had. All right, and then
there's an Anthony Davis to the Knicks rumor, just like there's an Anthony Davis to the Lakers.
Is that the guy with the eyebrow?
The brow wants out of New Orleans.
We don't want him in New York. Shave your eyebrows.
If the city of New Orleans hasn't had enough to be frustrated about.
Bro.
Not only are the Saints out of the Super Bowl, now Anthony Davis, their second most famous athlete behind Drew Brees, wants out of the Crescent City.
Those people don't care about sports down there. Have you ever been to New Orleans?
Never been there before, but I know for a fact their football fan base is really good.
You go to a New Orleans Saints game, those people don't even know that there's a game going on. There's just a party in the stands. And then like there's a big
Can't be any worse than the Dodgers.
Dodgers. The Dodgers in LA. Yeah, no. You're absolutely right.
Can't be any worse than that.
No, there are some fan bases out there where it's just like, oh, what the hell's going on? But the second a bad thing happens or a good thing happens, that there's bandwagon fans. But the Saints don't. Listen, that's a party town. They call it the Big Easy, but there's nothing easy about that place.
So let me ask you, when are you coming back again so that when the next time I see you, I could actually talk to you, because I can't talk to my co-host about the New York Knicks.
He's so angry. Look at him. His arms are crossed. He's so upset. I actually want, maybe we could
what
have you guys
is your
joust in the parking
obsession
lot.
with that
Can
sorry
you bring
franchise?
Him to your show? You would get, he'd be so famous if you brought him on his show.
I want him in like a dunk tank in the summertime though. And like you have to you have to somehow throw like Knicks balls into the hoop or something. I don't know.
Thank you. Yes.
I mean, or we'll just have a regular straightforward interview where we welcome you onto the broadcast normally.
Oh,
I'll take the straight interview.
But the dunk tanks.
I would no, he can't take a straight interview. He can't even be straight with you.
No, I will take the straight interview, and I will be straightforward and fair.
How long have you been a Nets fan? Since the Croatian sensation?
Since I was a little kid.
Yeah,
Since the Buck Williams days, since the Mike Jaminski days, Albert King, Otis Birdsong, Sugar Ray Richardson, who really killed his NBA career when he was doing so much cocaine. Although he did do well in France, though.
Players in the league, though.
You know how fast that guy ran up and down the court? Believe me, he made the All-Star team.
He was such a talented young man.
Yeah. I run up and down the court 2 times, I'm dead. Yeah.
Because here's the thing. In the 70s, and even in the slight 80s, when the Knicks and Nets had their great rivalry, with Buck Williams and all them other guys, that was a good team. They did have a good team. And then there was that long-ass stretch that the Nets had, worse than the New York Knicks. At least the Knicks made the playoffs.
It was bad for a while.
It was really
bad. But you know what?
Really bad.
It started to change. I'll never forget, I was actually at the game at Continental Airlines Arena when it started to change for the Nets. They started to blow. It was the first time they blew out the Knicks, right? I think it was like 1997, 99. It was starting to like after the Knicks had their run in the championship. So it might have been like 2001. They blew out the Knicks in Jersey.
Was this the Jason Kidd team?
It was the Jason Kidd team, and then all the Knicks fans were like, "What the hell are you doing? You guys are shooting threes when we're down by 20. There's no respect here. Like, where will you be at the end of the season?" Sure enough, it was the Knicks that were home and the Nets that kept playing. So that's when the Nets started to turn it around. And it's been really, to his credit, it's been a Nets town in terms of overall wins and momentum.
Yeah.
Because
Can you give...
Go on.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, can you give an objective assessment of the New York Knicks, please, and tell Jamie there that it's a true assessment?
So here's my best assessment of the Knicks. I hope that they never win a game again for the rest of the season, and I think that they're in a pretty good position to do that. Having said that, I want that because I want them to get the number 1 pick in the draft, but we're New York Knicks fans, and we know that we have terrible luck, and that's not going to happen, right?
Exactly.
But I think if the Knicks were to get anything less than the 2nd overall pick, it would be disastrous for them, given the season that
Who
they
would be
had.
the top 3? It would be
Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett,
R.J. Barrett would be
and
two.
maybe
That's my cutoff.
the kid from Murray State, which is unfortunately his name escapes me, but he's a sophomore over at Murray State right now. But that would probably be your top 3.
My cutoff would be Barrett, but I mean, I'll take a good
It would
point
be the
guard.
top 3.
Let me tell you,
top 3.
I just saw R.J. Barrett play over the weekend. He probably had more of an impact on Duke than Zion Williamson did. And that is nothing against Williamson. Williamson is a really good player. I mean, he is a beast.
He's like a
physically.
LeBron, though, in the sense that you don't teach your son how to play like Zion, right? Because he's just a human highlight reel.
Yeah.
Every time you see him in a highlight, he's jumping, right? And that's what you saw from LeBron. And you look at the same draft class that LeBron came out of with Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo, you could argue, was a more complete player coming out of Syracuse over LeBron. But it was the things that LeBron James were doing were unheard of. And that's why LeBron obviously has had a better career and a more longer-lasting effect on the NBA. But you can't play like LeBron James. He is a man playing with boys. And you could argue that Jordan's better because Jordan was this height and he did it with this. And LeBron's just a monster. Fine. You look at Zion, and it's really the same thing. I've seen a ton of highlights on the kid this year. I haven't seen a highlight of him making a 20-foot jumper. But I've seen him highlights, knocking the ball out of bounds, jumping over the backboard, ridiculous dunks. I think he's a game changer. But in the NBA, you need a game changer, and you need somebody that can shoot the ball. So you're still going to need to get somebody like a Kevin Durant, or forget Kevin Durant. Just bring in somebody that's better than a trash can, that's not going to tear his knee. Because I remember drafting Frederick Weiss, and I'm still depressed about that.
That was the low point for when things started to really sink for that franchise.
Really
That's
bad.
the lowest.
That's the lowest.
They
Does it
chose
get any lower
Frederick
than
Weiss
that?
over Ron
For him, that's the
Artest.
lowest.
Frederick Weiss's claim to fame was being jumped over by Vince Carter and dunked on.
There was another guy on the Knicks that didn't have no knees that couldn't jump. What are you talking about?
There's so many guys on the Knicks with no knees. I mean,
Exactly, back in the day. But let me ask you, the core that they have now, who's your core?
I don't know, man. I think that I like Kevin Knox, right? I think that he's a solid player. I do like Frank Ntilikina, but I don't like him like enough to like if somebody offered somebody up in a trade and asked for Frankie, I would send Frankie to the store and trade him for like a half a pack of Red Stripes at this point. Because look, he's a good player and he's not done maturing, but you could pretty much say that about every single man on the Knicks roster and say he's a good kid, he's not fully matured yet, and you don't know how it's going to shake out. So in my eyes, dump anybody that has a big contract and just roll the dice with the kids that you have and build around them. I think Fizdale's a good coach, and he's more valuable to the team now than any player on the roster because he's the head of the ship when you're trying to tank, which is near impossible to keep positive momentum. But when you had Fizdale, the coach, you ask people how they feel about him, and they love him, which is unbelievable considering they're
Unless you speak to Jamie. He's not the man that's going to bring you to the promised land.
Oh, brother, here we go again.
Look at how upset he
Isn't
is.
it true? He just said it. This is not the man that's going to bring you to the promised land. He just said it.
Well, the way he's organizing his X's and O's right now, why would he be?
Again, didn't you just hear they're trying to probably dump the team anyway? There's going to be 8 players that their contracts are up next year. This year, I should say. that you got people that they're trying to get rid of. So you would have to give the team at least 3 years, unless some miracle happens, at least 3 years to find out if that core is going to come out.
See, that's the problem. I am so tired of all of this time that's being wasted
It's real.
just to
But other teams do
rebuild.
it.
You know, why
When was the
can't
last time we rebuilt?
why can't somebody be creative and build on the fly?
They're creative now.
I
creative
don't see any creativity on this team now.
The youngest team in the league.
I know he's not
When
feeling
was the
well.
last time that happened?
Maybe he'd come down and fight. I don't know. Like,
I don't see any creativity whatsoever with this roster right now.
Let me ask, sir, can you please teach him, is there any creativity on the Knicks?
there is absolute masterpieces of creativity on the Knicks right now. I mean,
Thank you.
you know how hard it is with that mayhem of a nightmare that they have to go out there and compete. And listen, when you watch a Knick game, it's great. They compete for 3 quarters. The game is close, and then the fourth quarter comes and the wheels fall off. It's like the best of both worlds. You get to see your kids compete and lose.
Young team?
Oh,
When was the last time you see
usually we're rebuilding with old contracts and old knees, right?
Thank you.
And this year it's like we got a bunch of young kids and we could dump money. This guy looks, pretty helpful.
You're going to sit there
Like,
and
boom,
tell
buddy.
me that signing Tim Hardaway Jr. is your idea of creativity?
No, we're dumping him.
You're going to tell
forget
me
about him.
Mario Hezonja, a guy who's done nothing in that league, is your idea of
Gone.
creativity?
Gone.
Give
Gone
me
next year.
a
Dude,
break.
those guys are gone though. That's what I'm saying. All these guys that you're naming are
It was just
gone.
one and done.
Last time
We're
I
gonna-
checked, they're still occupying roster spots.
I will send Enes Kanter. I will personally send him back to Turkey. I will
That's
pay for
another
his
thing.
plane ticket.
No,
all right?
Why
No,
is
not Turkey.
why is
No.
Enes Kanter getting benched 2 days in a row? He's not seen any playing time whatsoever.
He's not good.
According to the
Defensively, he's
newspapers,
not good, but that guy can add so much for them in the low post as an offensive threat, and they're just benching
Yeah,
him.
but you know what Enes Kanter can do, right? You got to find out what the other kids are capable of. Enes Kanter
Right.
is a double-double guy, but he's a double-double guy on his best night. And more often than not, he's not a guy that you could dominate and work your offense consistently through the paint with him. I feel
Thank
that
you.
he
The voice of reason. Thank you.
he gets
The voice
he gets
of
worn
reason.
down,
Thank you.
and you're going to need to put some fresh legs in there, especially now as you're going to start moving into the second half of the year. You want to see what you got. You know you're going to dump his contract. Who cares if he sits on the bench and rots?
Thank you. Thank you very much. The voice of reason. Thank you.
Isn't the
Thank you.
He
idea
hates
of
me
trying
so
You know how
much.
many times I
Isn't
tried
the
to nail this guy
idea
on the wall
of
with
trying
everything?
to acquire some assets or make a trade for a guy to give him some playing time so you can showcase to other teams
People already
what
know what
he
Enes
can
Kanter
do?
is. They already
Thank you. They already know what
They
they
already
got
know.
with him.
They'll take him right now.
Thank you.
They'll
You know,
take him.
you're smart. I wish I had you as a co-host because good
No,
Lord,
you
talking
don't.
to this guy.
These stage lights are way too bright in here. I've lost 3 pounds since I sat down. I can't do that. I don't know how you guys do this, bro.
I
Hey,
wear sunglasses.
better to have the heat
Yeah.
of the lights in here than that
Yeah.
20-degree weather outside.
Holy Hannah, is that true? You guys are fun.
That's
I'll
right.
come back. I like you guys.
Yes.
I'm gonna have
We
you down on
definitely
Nobody
have to
Cares
have you back
Sports
on the
Show.
show.
Come next Monday. Come next Monday.
I can't make
promise
it.
You come next Monday.
All right. We'll see what we can do.
Well,
Because I tell you,
unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thanks to Kenny on the other side of the glass. Dan,
Hey,
thank you.
pleasure.
Thank you
Thanks so much for having me down. Appreciate it.
And if you ever need anything from us, let us know, okay?
Certainly will, man.
Yes, by all means, like a host.
Like a host. You got
I
it.
hate you. For everyone here, I'm Jamie.
Ah,
Good night, everyone.
nobody
Night,
cares.
night.
Good night, folks.